Well, another Tron movie just came out, and shocker, it isn't doing so well at the box office. So much so, in fact, that the rumor in Hollywood is that Disney is considering pulling the plug on the franchise entirely. Right now, Jared Leto is taking most of the heat for the movie's failure, and while some of the blame is certainly justified, I don't think it is fair to put the failure of the whole franchise on his shoulders. The simple truth is that Tron as a franchise has always struggled to find a consistent core audience, which is a shame because Tron is a franchise that I really enjoy. I love the world and the concepts, yet it has been unable to connect with a broader audience outside of niche circles on the internet.
It's like, did anyone see the movie Tron?
No.
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 Yes. I mean, no. No.
In spite of its obscurity, it is a franchise that I can't help but be fascinated by, and would be very disappointed if it were unceremoniously retired. So in this video, I'm going to explore why I believe the Tron films keep failing, and what can be done to fix this mess of a franchise. If you asked the average person, what is the central theme of Star Wars, they would probably say something along the lines of, it's about good versus evil, light versus dark, resisting temptation, and seeking redemption. If you asked the average person what is the central theme of The Matrix, they would probably say something along the lines of, breaking free from the collective systems of control and discovering your true individual identity. But if you ask the average person what is the central theme of Tron, they would probably say something along the lines of, it's about computers and a video game, I think? One of the biggest problems with all three Tron films is that they traffic in a lot of big ideas, yet rarely has the franchise ever focused on a core unifying theme. The original Tron, on paper, is a religious allegory, but it also touches on the dangers of collectivism, corporate espionage, and the threat of AIs taking over the world. Tron Legacy is primarily about the relationship between Sam Flynn and his father, but it's also about the rise of dictatorships, also it's a Frankenstein's monster story, and it's also about how new life forms could emerge from digital technology. Tron Ares is supposedly about the implications of an AI becoming more human, but it's also about the digital world coming into the real world, the military-industrial complex, and it's a love story, kind of, but not really. This jumble of themes makes it so that Tron as a franchise doesn't have a distinct identity beyond the aesthetics and some of the basic concepts. I believe this is one of the reasons why the Avatar films have been so consistently successful. Sure, they are very heavy-handed with their messaging. The message is clear and easily understood by a broad audience. In order for a Tron film to connect with a wider demographic, it needs to have a strong central theme that is digestible for mainstream audiences. Otherwise, what they get is a mishmash of a lot of interesting concepts that are never fully explored. Another big problem with all of the Tron films is the distinct lack of interesting or relatable characters. Kevin Flynn is a decent perspective character in the original Tron, but there isn't anything that complex or interesting about him. The character is largely carried by the goofy, carefree performance of Jeff Bridges. The original Tron film was more focused on exploring its world and themes rather than giving either Flynn or Tron a true character arc. This works well enough for a standalone film, but the shallowness of the characters makes the original film a difficult one to build upon. That being said, of the three films, Tron Legacy is easily the strongest when it comes to character work. The relationship between Sam and his father is the strongest aspect of the film, and the closest any of the films get to a true emotional arc. The parallels between Sam as the true son of Flynn and Clue as the false son is pretty compelling and emotionally investing. There is a reason why the final confrontation in Legacy is one of the most referenced scenes in the whole series. It is easily the most emotional moment in the whole series, and a moment in which the audience can truly get invested in the journey of these characters. But while Legacy provided a solid emotional conclusion to build off of, Tron Ares decided to ditch the story of Sam and Cora for Jared Leto's Ares. This wouldn't be a huge problem if Ares himself were interesting, but unfortunately, he is easily the worst protagonist across the 3 Tron films. The idea of a program coming into the real world and gradually becoming more human is interesting in concept, but the writing just isn't strong enough to make this interesting. We've already seen this story done so much better in Blade Runner, Star Trek, and Terminator, and Jared Leto's performance also doesn't help with the emotional investment. It makes sense for his performance to be cold and distant at the beginning of the film, but by the end he should have more human-like qualities. But Leto's performance remains flat throughout the entire movie, which just makes his character unrelatable and unlikable. If Tron wants to connect with a broader audience, it needs a perspective character that is both charismatic and emotionally investing. And unfortunately, while we've gotten charismatic characters and emotionally investing characters, we've yet to see a film in the franchise that has mastered both. The final reason I believe mainstream audiences aren't invested in Tron is because, frankly, the franchise doesn't have an ongoing story that rewards the audience for watching all of the films in order. The bridge between Tron and Tron Legacy is pretty straightforward and makes sense given that there is a nearly 30-year gap between the 2 films. Tron Legacy is effectively a soft reboot of the series, and, as many critics have noted, this movie was the prototype for the Legacy sequel formula that movies like The Force Awakens and Jurassic World would replicate. And as a Legacy sequel, I think it functions better than most. Kevin Flynn is made into a reluctant and disenfranchised figure, but in a way that makes sense without compromising on what defined his character in the original film. And taking Clue, a character that did this in the original film, and making him into the best villain in the series will never cease to amaze me. While it is by no means a perfect film, the more time passes, the more I realize just how hard Disney fumbled the ball by not making a true sequel to Tron Legacy. Not only did this movie introduce a whole new generation of fans to Tron through its distinct visuals and amazing soundtrack, but from a writing standpoint, this movie opened up so many possible routes for the story to go. It could have followed Sam trying to find his place in the world without his dad. It could have followed Cora trying to live as a human. It could have followed Cillian Murphy as the son of Edward Dillinger rising to power in NCOM. It could also, address what happened to Tron, the title character, after his fall at the end of Legacy. There were so many directions the story could have gone, and there was opportunity to create an ongoing story that audiences would get invested in. But for some reason, Disney decided to completely shift gears and make a film that doesn't have hardly anything to do with the events of Tron Legacy, nor does it incorporate any of its characters. And apart from a couple nods to Legacy and the original Tron, there isn't any incentive for audiences to watch the first 2 movies in order to understand this one. Ares is effectively another soft reboot, but in a way that is far more frustrating and far less inventive than Legacy. And this wouldn't be so bad if Tron Ares itself were an interesting story, but it isn't. even if Jared Leto were replaced with a more charismatic lead, it wouldn't change the fact that Tron Ares has a painfully by-the-numbers script. It doesn't add to the Tron universe in any meaningful way beyond some cool visuals and good music. With each movie in the Tron franchise essentially being a standalone entry, it doesn't present an ongoing story for audiences to get invested in like with other sci-fi franchises. As such, any future entries in the Tron series would need to make an effort to tie all of it together in a way that is not only coherent, but emotionally investing. With all of this established, what is my prescription for the ailing Tron franchise? Well, it's actually quite simple, because there is one more piece of Tron media that I've yet to mention. One that I believe holds the key to fixing the entire franchise, and that is Tron Uprising is the single greatest thing to come out of the Tron franchise, period. With it being cancelled after only one season back in 2013, Tron Uprising joins the ranks of Firefly as an underground hit that was cut off before it had a chance to truly flourish. Tron Uprising miraculously avoids all of the problems that the films have consistently fallen prey to. In Uprising, there is a thematic focus on resisting tyrannical governments that the show thoroughly explores. The characters are actually fleshed out and given distinct personalities, and it has a story that ties directly into the events of Tron Legacy. Not to mention, this show has a shockingly stacked voice cast. Not only do we have Bruce Boxleitner back as Tron, but joining the cast are Elijah Wood, Lance Henriksen, Paul Rubens, and Mandy Moore. Admittedly, the animation style does take a little getting used to. I think it's the character's weirdly long limbs that always throws me off. But it definitely grows on you over time, and is very distinct from any other Western cartoon of its era. Unfortunately, the high-profile voice cast and expensive animation did contribute a lot to this show's eventual cancellation. And it's a shame it never got a proper finale, because it is only 19 episodes long, but what is there in terms of story and characters is nothing short of fantastic. It definitely falls into the same category as Batman the Animated Series and Avatar The Last Airbender as a show that both kids and adults can enjoy. If you are a super fan or a casual fan of Tron, you owe it to yourself to watch this show. At this point, over a decade later, it is highly unlikely that Disney would ever renew this show for a second season. However, I do believe that Tron Uprising acts as a perfect template for any future Tron projects. On the slim chance that anyone watching this video is someone in a position to write the next Tron story, here is my advice. Give us a narrative focused on characters first and world building and visuals second. Tron already has a distinct aesthetic identity to build off of. What is missing is the heart, and if you can nail that, then you will get the mainstream audience on board. And honestly, taking Tron back to the small screen might be the way to go moving forward. Yes, a season of television could theoretically be more expensive than a film, but at the same time, modern audiences have demonstrated that they are generally more willing to give something on streaming a chance than something in theaters. And with a show, the writers have a chance to tell a longer, more fleshed out story that has a better chance of appealing to a wider audience. But that's just my take from one fan to another. Beyond this video being a sneaky way to get my subscribers to watch Tron Uprising, What is the point? Will we ever get a Tron movie or show that nails the formula and brings in the mainstream audience? At this point, assuming the property remains firmly in Disney's iron grip, probably not. But at the very least, this video gives me a chance to vent as a passionate Tron fan, as well as to go through a bit of a hypothetical writing exercise. And if Disney does end up making more Tron content, I will definitely be watching it, because even if it disappoints, it is a world that I love, and I will never stop being fascinated by this ambitious mess of a franchise. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and let me know down in the comments section your own thoughts on Tron, as well as any other sci-fi franchises you'd be interested in me covering on the channel. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.